Hey South Hills, today I have our Corona campus pastor, Pastor Adam, I want him to share a story with you guys. One of the impactful things about South Hills is that we're not just a church for adults, we're a church for kids, we're a church for students. And one of the things that we've noticed is that our ministries are doing such a great job impacting families that one of the students from the Corona campus actually had a moment where she ministered to her family, and because of her sharing the story of South Hills.
You know, sometimes when we think about one person's life being touched, it's never really just that person, because everybody's life always has a ripple effect. And I'm thinking of one specific incident where this girl hears about it. She's getting invited multiple times by this friend of hers, and finally she decides to check it out. She's convinced she's going to hate it. She ends up loving it and goes home, tells her parents. They can't believe that she's found a church thing that she actually likes. They're starting to get to the place where like, we're here every Wednesday night. What are we going to do? We're just sitting in the parking lot. And so they decide that they're going to jump in and try out the parents group. They end up loving it. They make a bunch of friends. And after several Wednesdays, they're like, well, maybe we should check out this place on a Sunday. They bring their younger kids. Those kids love the kids ministry. And people are noticing like, hey, how come you're never available on the weekends anymore? Their friends start asking what they're doing. And now the parents are inviting other families and other friends in. And, you know, now there's always a row. And that row keeps getting bigger. And now it's expanded to 2 and 3 rows. And I'm like, are all these people from you guys? And I told them if they keep at it, we're just going to give them their own service. But again, you never really realize the power of, you know, one brave girl decides that she's going to invite someone. And good thing she did, because it's transforming the lives of multiple families.
Well, shout out to our South Hills Students Ministry. Because of what we're doing with South Hills students, there's people in there wanting to share what God is doing in their life, and other people now are getting to benefit from the rest of the ministries that South Hills has to offer. We just never know what the power of an invite's going to have and the ripple effect of how it's going to change lives. Mm-hmm.
This week has been a very full week. As Alex shared, there's a lot of stuff that was going on this week at church. And then yesterday we had a guys' breakfast, which was awesome time. We made pancakes and bacon and had way too much coffee. And then there was all kinds of stuff going on this week. And just in a attempt to make it a little bit more chaotic, I also found myself in a car accident this week. It was, everybody is fine, and so that's the most important thing, but it was a really bad car accident. I'm fine. I'm here. I have just as many bad jokes as I normally do, so buckle up. Gosh. I was buckled up, for the record. I didn't plan that, but, you know, sometimes... My magic little toaster, I don't think is going to recover from this one. So this may be the last Sunday you get to hear me talk and make fun of my car. So, as I've been dealing with just the realities of being in a car accident, you got to talk to insurance companies and, you know, dealing with all of that, which is just so much fun. It's like all of our favorite things to do is sit on the phone and recount stories and details and answer questions and all these things. And I couldn't help but think of my kids, and specifically my younger one, who one of his favorite commercials is the Geico insurance lizard. Like, he just thinks it's like the funniest thing. And it's just because he doesn't actually have to deal with insurance. It's not that funny when you have to call Geico. It's like, yeah, is the lizard there? Because this is no fun. He does. He thinks it is the funniest thing. And every time he sees a commercial or a billboard with that gecko on there, he just cracks up laughing. And I was thinking about that this week, and all these things just kind of run into each other. And as we talk about this topic we're going to talk on today, we've been in a series called The Revolutionary, talking about how Jesus changes drastically transforms, flips upside down the way that we approach different aspects of life. So many different aspects. We don't have time to look at all of them, but this month we're looking at 4 of them. Last week we looked at grace, and today we're going to continue that series. But you guys can probably finish the line from these commercials for the insurance agencies always have. And we'll use Geico for an example here. But it says, people who switch to Geico save up to $400 a year. Have you guys heard something like that? You guys have heard those types of commercials? And so let me just clarify. Every single one of us has then picked up the phone and called, right? No. I would actually probably assume that most of us haven't. Because while they're saying this, and it must be true on some level, there's a part of us in our heads and our minds that's like, there's no way that's actually possible. There's no way that everybody who calls Geico saves $400 a year. It has to have some element of truth to be allowed to be involved in marketing, but also there's got to be some catch. There's got to be something here that's not accurate, that I'm not understanding. And so this week, as I was thinking about this idea, what we're going to talk about today, I started reading some articles. And here's what I found out, that they said, yeah, it is true. The people that switch to Geico do save on average $400 a month. And people that call Geico to get a quote and find out it's going to be more expensive don't switch. So people aren't switching if they're going to have to pay more. And it makes so much sense. Like, oh yeah, I'm not going to call and be like, oh, it's $1,000 more a month. Sign me up. It's like you're going to stay with who you have. So all of the people that are calling and switching from one current insurance agent to another, they are making that choice because they are saving money. So it's one of these things that's, well, yeah, that is a true statement. And also, is it really actually true? Like, is it really the fullest picture of truth? And we find ourselves in a difficult space because what is true and how truthful do we have to be? And is it enough to just say this thing that's partially true, or do we have to actually give this full picture? Another great example of this is with toothpaste. You guys have seen the ads? 9 out of 10 dentists all agree that Colgate or Sensodyne or whatever your preferred toothpaste is, 9 out of 10 dentists recommend using this toothpaste. And every brand of toothpaste has 9 out of 10 dentists in their pocket. And this article, it was going on and it was talking about, yes, that is a true statement. And it feels like, man, 90% of dentists, they say that this is their favorite or this is their preferred, but every brand says that. So how does that work? And so they talk about, let's say that, they go to these dentists that they're asking for their opinion, and what they do is they give them a list of about 50 different toothpastes, and they say, well, you just put a check mark beside any toothpaste that you're comfortable recommending. And so they go down and they just put, 15, 20, 40, however many check marks on, yeah, this one's fine, this one's fine, this one's fine. And that's how they get that information. So all of a sudden now you're like, well, I thought that this was your favorite toothpaste. But they're like, yeah, just probably use toothpaste. Except for one dentist who just is never a fan of any toothpaste. Like that 1 out of 10 who's like, yeah, I don't support any of these toothpastes. It's interesting because there's this idea where it's like, yeah, that is true. 9 out of 10 do recommend this one, but it's not fully true. It's not the whole truth. It's not what we really want. We have a sense that there must be something in this kind of world and this story and this way of communicating that doesn't actually embody the full truth. I think we can all agree that there's a lot of times that people will lie or manipulate or distort the truth intentionally, but the reality is that all of us have done this on some level. All of us have had moments where we were certain that we were right. We were totally confident. We knew exactly how to get there, or exactly what the number was, or exactly what the song lyric was in the chorus. And we've been singing it a certain way for 20 years, and then all of a sudden we realize, oh, I was wrong. I was mistaken. That's not actually what it is. That's not actually how to get there. And it's not that we are liars, it's that we were mistaken. And there's a big difference, right? We're pretty comfortable knowing that people make mistakes, but you probably aren't going to just choose to interact with liars all the time. There's a difference between intentional twisting of the truth and people just being mistaken and not actually aware of the truth or not aware that there was other information that maybe they didn't know. And we're talking about this idea of truth today, which honestly is a really stressful topic to preach on, because the last few years it feels like truth has become a real kind of flashpoint type of conversation. Everybody has an opinion on the truth. And there's so many different versions of it. There's yours, and then there's mine, and then there's their truth, and then there's truth on social media, and then there's truth on the news, and we say some people's truth is not actually true, and they say that about ours, and so we come to this topic, and it just feels very loaded and very challenging. It's a tough thing to talk about truth because it feels like a difficult thing to even find. But there's another category of things where it's not that we don't want to admit that we're wrong, but it's like we can't afford to be wrong. It would cost us too much to acknowledge that we had made a mistake. Even entertaining the possibility would mean questioning our very identity or our sense of security or our favorite hobby. We think, I'm in too deep. I've already come out so strong on this. I ruined Thanksgiving dinner for the last 3 years because I was so confident. I can't change my perspective now. I can't go back and say, I realize I was wrong now. I've got to make this stand forever. I can never change. I've put too much into it. It's almost become a defining characteristic of who I am, so I can't acknowledge a mistake. There's actually a term for this. There's a term called sunk cost fallacy, which is when a person is reluctant to abandon something that they've invested heavily in, even after they realize that it would be beneficial for them to kind of walk away from it. There's this idea that, man, I think I've done too much. And there's different ways to think through this. I don't know about you guys, but have you guys ever started watching a movie and you realize this is a terrible movie, but you're already like 10 minutes in? And it's like, I'm not going to just waste 10 minutes of my life. I'll watch the next 2 hours. Or, maybe, there's a ticket that you bought tickets to a concert. You bought it a few months ago and you were super excited about it then. And then it comes time for the concert and you're kind of at this place like, well, I don't really want to go. And, it's like, I got so much to do. I have to get up early. I got to pay for a sitter. I got all these things, but I already spent $30. So I guess I'll go against everything inside of me that just says don't go. It's like this idea, like I'm somehow too invested in this idea. I've already put too much in there. And it's not just money related. We do this with truth also. We realize that being wrong about this means rethinking other things. And I just can't afford to do that. I can't afford to acknowledge that maybe I made a mistake, or maybe that there is another way of thinking about it. Maybe there's 2 ways to solve one problem. And I told people for years that there was only one, and now I'm realizing that maybe it could be a combination. I think this happens a lot of times with faith as well. I know a lot of people that grew up in churches or in homes or families where they were told like very strictly, if you don't believe everything that's in here, then you can't believe anything. And you can't question and you can't doubt. And so usually what happens is people either kind of swing to one end of the spectrum, one or the other, and one end is they kind of dig in and entrench themselves, and they become just incredibly passionate about defending a very specific perspective on their faith, a very specific theology or a very specific belief, and they have every right answer, and they will destroy any sort of suggestion that you might have that it could be a different way. And then the other end of the spectrum is, well, if I can't acknowledge aspects of this have challenges, then I'm just going to walk away from all of it. I'm just going to give up on the whole thing. It costs too much to make adjustments. It would cost me too much to say, I may have misunderstood or misinterpreted a part of this, and I need to acknowledge that. So it's easier just to walk away from the whole thing entirely. We're not really afraid of an idea being false. I think a lot of times what we actually become afraid of is that our identity is false. Like the thing that we have wrapped our lives around, the thing that has marked us, the thing that, we would say, this is who I am. It's defined by these things or these beliefs or this party or this economic reality or this faith. we become so connected in our identity to these types of things that we are terrified to consider that maybe there could be a different way. And so a lot of us, we just double down. We refuse to read. We refuse to learn. We refuse to listen to somebody else. I think one of the most incredible things that we could do on any topic, whether you're talking about politics, whether you're looking at faith, Christianity, religion, whether you're talking about relationships or health, is to read a variety of things, to become aware of, well, why do other people think the way that they think? Help me understand. They're not all just terrible idiots. There must be a reason why they think this. And you're probably laughing because you have a lot of people in your life that you think are terrible idiots. We have to recognize, man, there must be another perspective here. There must be something. And so what does it look like for us to acknowledge, hey, I will listen to something that I disagree with. I will read something that maybe seems like not totally in line with the way that I think or what I've been taught or what I believe to be true. I do this, and I try and do this a lot with faith. It's important to me to understand why there are people that don't believe. It's important for me to understand why people walk away. What parts of the scripture do people question and have issues with? It's important for me to understand that, not just so I can look at them and say, well, you're an idiot. You're wrong. But I need to be able to understand it because I want to learn. I want to acknowledge. I want to grow. I want to understand what's happening. A lot of us say that we want the truth, but most of the time we just really want to be right more than we want to be true. We're not on a truth quest. We're on a confirmation quest. I'm going to find as much ammunition as possible to prove my perspective. And I'm going to ignore and point out all the flaws in every other thought or idea or concept. It's not actually a search for truth. We're just trying to reinforce our perspective or what we need to happen or maybe what we prefer. Truth doesn't usually take into consideration our actual preferences. So how do we find the truth? Is it possible to discover what is true? Are there things that are true for everyone, or is everything subjective? And the essential truth, I mean, most people would say, well, if there's a fact, then it must be true. But again, we find ourselves at a place where we say, well, the fact is that 9 out of 10 dentists agree that every toothpaste is the best one for you. It's like, well, facts kind of leave us a little bit lingering. So what is it that we do? We have to find trustworthy sources because some people are intentionally lying and trying to mislead you, and some people are just mistaken. Some people know some things that are true, and some people are true. And this is going to be maybe the most confusing thing that I try and say in this series because I haven't figured out about it. I spent all week trying to figure out a different way to not just say true 2 times in one sentence, but I can't. There's this idea of things that are true, and then there's another idea of being true, of saying facts, things that are truthful, and being the type of person that is true, aware, honest, actually open to acknowledging what's happening in their heart and inside of their minds. We're going to talk about this a little bit, and hopefully I'll figure out a way to make some sense out of this as we go along. Ultimately, we believe as followers of Jesus that he is the source of truth and the clearest picture for how truth can heal and bring wholeness and freedom. And people always ask Jesus for the truth. They always asked him questions, but he rarely just gave them answers. He usually asked them a question in return because he knew that their question wasn't the most important question they had. There was always a second question that they had. There was always something else that they wanted to get at or get to. But Jesus understood that the best answer is oftentimes just a really good question. There's a story in John chapter 18. This is towards the end of Jesus' life when they were trying to find reasons legitimately to execute Jesus, to crucify him. And so we're going to jump right into the middle of this story. John 18, verses 33 is where we'll start. It says, Pilate, who was kind of the regional leader of that time, they needed him to sign off on this execution. Pilate then went back inside the palace. He summoned Jesus and he said, "Are you the king of the Jews? Is that your own idea? Jesus asked, or did others talk to you about me? Which is like a really poignant question. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think I ever noticed this question until this week as I was getting ready for this message. This is just the Easter story, the Good Friday story. Pilate asks him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus returns with this question that's trying to get at this idea of, well, are you actually interested in learning the truth? Or are you trying to reinforce what you've already been told? Do you actually want to know what's going on? Or are you just trying to get the facts that you need to approve an execution, which will make people continue to love you in this situation? That's a really cutting question. It's a really poignant question. To the frustration of everyone around him, Jesus rarely answered the questions that he was asked, but it's not because he was wishy-washy or avoiding the subject. It's because he would use questions to cut to the heart of the matter. Questions clarify. Questions expose the things that we're hiding from others and even the things that we're hiding from ourselves. When we think of truth, most of us think that we are looking for answers. Answers will give us truth. But the reality is that usually questions are the best pathway to finding out what is true. Answers is like a fact that we can just kind of ingest, and all of a sudden we're going to put in the right information and we're going to believe the right way. But a question causes us to wrestle and to look inward and to become aware of what we're thinking and why. Questions clarify. And Jesus essentially is asking Pilate, why do you want to know? It's not because he's being difficult. It's because he's trying to get to the question behind the question. But Pilate wasn't interested in what was true. He just wanted the facts that would support his decision that he needed to make. He avoids the question altogether. He doesn't really care. The story goes on in verse 35 of John chapter 18. Pilate replies, he says, "Am I a Jew? Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it that you have done?" Which is awesome. Whenever the judge asks the person on trial, so why don't you just tell me what you've done? Why don't you give me the information that I need to make a judgment? It's like, man, something is off here. Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. It's like, ha, I got it. I got the information that I needed to prove everybody's point, and we can go ahead and move forward. The fact has come to the surface, and now we get to move on. And Jesus answers, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me." And then Pilate asks a question which people have been asking for thousands of years. It is not new. It is not because you watch NBC or Fox or MSN or Instagram or your aunt's Facebook feed or whatever it is. What is truth? And he asks the question because he knows he's just trying to get through the day. What else did he have on his schedule? How many people does he have to make a judgment on? I just need to have the information, the facts, so that I can just make the decisions and we can all go home. This is what is important to him. He's asking, what is truth? How could we even know? We're just going to make judgments. And Jesus is intentionally trying to make a point to say that there is more happening. And what we can pull out of this story is that I think that Jesus would ask us the same question, which is, why are you asking that question? What are you really looking for? Have you actually paused to consider what is true? Not just the facts that support a perspective or a belief, whether it's politics or religion or faith or health or relationships or whatever it is, not just true things so you can continue doing what you want to do, but what is it really that matters? What is it really that's driving you? What is it really that's causing you to ask these questions? Jesus essentially is trying to articulate to Pilate that truth is not a fact, it's a person. And he goes on and he says this clearly. In John 14:6, Jesus taught, he said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And it's a difficult thing for us to kind of understand this idea. It's like, how is a person the truth? How can that possibly be? How can Jesus be the truth? And I think that there's a reality here that I'm trying to wrestle with in my own life as I'm navigating this over the last week, is that truth, there can be a true fact, but when we actually try and interact with truth, it's not something on paper, it actually is something that impacts us. When I try and engage with truth, when I try and honestly ask the question and truly be open to learning, and maybe I am mistaken, it's not just that I'm taking in information, but truth is actually searching me. Truth is actually moving into and kind of enveloping me. And as we engage in a relationship with Jesus, who is the truth, it's not just a one-way learning of true statements or correct moral perspectives or memorizing the right Bible verses. It is learning and engaging, but then also actually being affected and transformed by truth. It is a hard and honest process to allow that to happen. But I don't honestly really want to know the truth most of the time. If I'm being honest, which I try to as a pastor and a preacher on Sunday mornings, find me this afternoon and it's a different story. But can we just acknowledge, you can just do it in your head, nobody will hear you, nobody will know, but can we just acknowledge that I actually don't want to change my perspective? I don't want to believe anything different. I'm pretty comfortable with this. I have friends that agree with me. I've got a job, I've got a scenario, I've got whatever it is. It's uncomfortable to actually know truth, to open myself up to the possibility that I could be mistaken. What could be taken from me in that process? What could I lose? What part of my identity could be changed? It is difficult. It is not comfortable. And none of us, no sane person would just naturally choose, hey, you know what? I'm going to see if everything I believe is wrong today. That's going to be how I spend my time. I'm going to consider that maybe the person that I look down on or that I have contempt for, or that I've fought against or pushed against, I'm going to consider that maybe they're right and I'm wrong. And I'm going to genuinely open myself up to the possibility of learning what is true, not just of having true statements, but being changed and transformed by interacting with a relationship with the truth, with who Jesus is. For Jesus, the purpose of truth isn't just to know the right information, but to experience personal transformation. That's why earlier in his life, he says, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free, which can be quoted as a statement of Jesus, but I think that it's been quoted by people all around the world, regardless of their faith. There's this concept of the truth will set you free, and that is a reality. It doesn't mean that it'll be painless or easy. It can be challenging and it can be difficult, but there is freedom that comes when we step into the truth, when we step into the light. And Jesus doesn't allow us to objectify truth as just an intellectual knowledge that we can treat however we want. The only truth that really matters is truth that has the possibility of changing us. I want us to think about it for a second. If we believe as Christians that we've been transformed by a loving God, we believe that we should become more loving. If we acknowledge that we have experienced the forgiveness of a forgiving God, then we believe that we should become more forgiving. If we believe in a God that provides hope and a way and can bring dead things to life, then we should become people who are more hopeful. And if we believe that we serve a God who is beautiful and good and true, then we should also become more true. We should become honest, sincere, pure, authentic. There's 1,000 words and none of them are quite right. I've been wrestling with it all week. And I don't know how else to say it. And if you have a better word, don't embarrass me right now. You can tell me after service. That's the truth. But there's this reality. It should change us. It doesn't just give us the right information or the right answers. It changes us to become right people. It changes us to be honest with ourselves and with others. You can have so many of the right answers and still not be true. You can know so many true statements and facts about Christianity or Scripture, and it can still have no impact on the way that you live. This is why, tragically, we hear story after story of pastors and preachers and speakers who speak incredible truths, and God uses those truths to change so many people's lives, thousands of people's lives. And that person can have a total moral failure. They can blow their marriage apart. They can make poor decisions. And it doesn't mean that what they said was untrue. They were saying true things. They were preaching sermons that were true. And God was using that. But they weren't true. They were not honest with themselves. They weren't allowing themselves to be searched and known by a creator God who wants to help us change and become whole. It doesn't mean what they said was false. It just means that there was an aspect of who they were that wasn't allowing themselves to interact in a relationship with truth in their own life. One of the prophets in the Old Testament said it this way. He said, "The heart is deceitful above all things. Oh yeah, it also can't be cured." So if you think that maybe you fixed it, joke's on you. Who can understand it? The heart is deceitful above all things, and there is no cure. Who can understand it? I think that what I've seen, what I've experienced personally, what I've seen in other relationships and connections is this reality that nobody can fool you better than you. Nobody can lie to you better than you. I lie to myself all day long, not on purpose. I'm not trying to I'm not actively lying to myself, but I am gifted at coming up with reasons and excuses, taking scriptures and concepts and twisting them to make them work for whatever it is that is most convenient for me at any moment. And I'm the most spiritual person in the room. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You're laughing because you know that's not true, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. We have the ability to fool ourselves, and we do it all day long. It is so important for us to recognize. This is why when people say, just follow your heart, it's like, no, I wouldn't do that. I would not do that. We have the ability to fool ourselves, to tell ourselves lies, to convince ourselves that something is true or untrue or bad or good, and these ideas, they keep us hostage. I heard one pastor talk about it this way, and he just simply asked this question. He's, when you start to have this way of interacting with others, you just need to ask yourself, am I being true? Am I being true? Not did I say something that's truthful or correct or factual, but am I being true? Am I acknowledging what might actually be happening inside my heart or inside my mind? Am I acknowledging maybe that I have some fears, or I have a family history, or I have a tendency or an addiction? Am I being true about who I am and allowing that to be honest in this scenario? Am I being true? We can ask ourselves all kinds of questions along this line. Am I being honest with myself? Really? Are you being honest with yourself? Really? Why am I doing this? Really? Why am I avoiding that? Really? Why am I going? Really? Why did I buy that? Really? This is something that Ez helps me with. I will oftentimes tell her of things that we need, and she says, do we really need it, or do you just want it? And if you just want it, it's okay. You can still get it. But let's just be honest about why we're getting it. And it feels very uncomfortable. But you know what? it actually makes it so I can enjoy it a lot more. Because otherwise, I'm coming up with 1,000 excuses of why we need something, and I have to prove it for weeks after. See how useful that thing is? That new pair of shoes is so useful. Whatever the thing is, it's just why do I want to buy it really? Why am I drinking really? What's the actual reason behind the reason that I just imagine in my mind? Why do I drive this car really? Why am I exercising really? Why am I messaging that person on Facebook or on Instagram really? Why did I go out with him or her really? Why did I file for a divorce really? Why are you taking that job or promotion really? Why won't you call your parents or your siblings or your kids really? We have so many reasons that can immediately come to our mind. And in those moments, we are giving our best Pilate impersonation. We're just trying to find a reason to give us the comfort or the excuse to just never have to think about it. I just want to get through my day. I don't want to have to be introspective. I don't want to have to be honest with myself. I don't want to have to really process this, really. The heart is deceitful above all else. No one can understand it. And so we have to be intentional. When we start thinking about truth and what is true, it's not just about true statements or facts. It's about who am I really? And am I engaging in a relationship with the truth, Jesus, and allowing him to shine a light on the areas where I could be mistaken. I could be flawed. I could be broken or have an unhealthy habit or perspective. We cannot just settle for being right. We have to strive to become true. There's two things that I just kind of wanted to give us something practical here. This is just something I think that we can maybe begin to work through. The first thing is to admit it. So for us to admit that, our heart is really working overtime. That our minds, our heart is an incredible deceiver. It has this ability to trick us and fool us. And we have this ability to come up with all these reasons. And we just need to admit it, probably on a daily basis. Because, like I said, we are the best salespeople to ourselves. And we just need to admit it on a regular basis. No, I need to check myself. I need to look inward. And then we need to ask it, why really do I want this? Why really am I making this decision, avoiding that call, whatever it might be? And the reality is, Jesus said that as we know the truth will set us free. And like I said, it may hurt a little bit of your ego or your pride. There may be some sort of internal challenge that comes with it, but the freedom on the other side of acknowledging that we were mistaken is incredible. The freedom that comes on the other side of becoming true, of that journey, is life-giving. I know that because I've experienced that in my own life. A number of times, really, but I think the time that it was most clear to me was I was about 22 years old. I was volunteering at a church and thinking about going into ministry, and really was falling in love with this idea of who God was all over again. It was a very real thing. And I also had this other kind of like second life. And it's not because I didn't believe this, it's just that I was hiding all of this, that there was no truth on this aspect. And I don't know if you guys have ever had that situation where you saw like a thread on your shirt and you went to like pull it out and it ended up being like half the shirt, just kept coming. It was like one of those types of situations where it's like somebody saw something in me and they asked me about it. And I knew that I could probably just like smooth it down or tuck it in like we do sometimes when it's on our t-shirt sleeve or whatever it is. But I also knew that this was a moment that I could actually become true. And not because I was smart. I think I was just exhausted. I just was incredibly honest. And I told the truth about what I was doing and what I was wrestling with and the things that I was struggling with. And it was terrifying and hurtful to myself to acknowledge. My ego was hurting, my pride was hurting, and I found so much freedom that day. That was the first time that somebody ever told me to go to a counselor, and they paid for it. And it was the greatest gift. The freedom that came from being true, it does give us the greatest sense of freedom that we could possibly have. It's not without challenges, but there is hope as we engage in a relationship with the way, the truth, and the life. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, this is a challenging thing because we are adept at convincing ourselves that we have things under control, that we do have the best of intentions, that we are open to other perspectives and ideas. But I think so much of that, I can speak for myself, is just my own heart and ego and my mind trying to convince myself that it's more comfortable to stay here. That I'm open enough, but I don't ever have to really change too much. And God, I pray for myself and for each person in the room, each person watching online, that we would become true people. That we would become open to the idea that we could be mistaken, that we could be fooling ourselves, that there could be things in our lives that we have somehow covered over or smoothed out that actually need to be brought into the light. God, I pray your Spirit would speak to each one of us and give us a sense of confidence, because honestly, it's scary to be honest. It's scary to be true. It's scary to put things out into the open and into the light. But the freedom that is on the other side is one of the greatest gifts that we can have in you. So God, I pray that for those of us that are Christians, that say we follow the way of Jesus, that we would release our obsession with having true statements and the high ground in arguments and being able to prove a point. And that we would move more closely to becoming true people, that we would engage closer with you in a relationship, and that we would be open to you speaking to us and changing us, our hearts and our minds, and experiencing healing and freedom in that process. God, I pray for people that may be here or maybe listening that maybe don't have a relationship with you, and they haven't been at a place where that made sense or they were willing to acknowledge that. Maybe they've been hurt by pastors like me in the past, or other religious people that have kind of put this weight on their shoulders that no one was meant to carry. God, I pray that today that they would have a glimpse of freedom, a freedom that comes, a freedom that is found in a relationship with you. In a relationship where I get to say, here is who I am. Here is all of me, the flaws that I'm aware of and the ones that I have somehow blinded myself to. God, would you change me? Would you help me? Would you transform my heart? Would you transform my mind? God, I pray that each one of us would have the courage to pray a prayer like that today. We're grateful for your grace and your presence with us. And I pray that we would continue to lean in closer to you, closer to the truth each day. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.